Welcome to the inside story on the cardiovascular system. We'd like to request you do a surgical scrub before proceeding with this section. The illustrators are getting ready to do some open heart animations on A.D.A.M, and we need to keep a sterile field. You'll see how A.D.A.M's heart pumps blood through its major blood vessels. You'll also watch how it keeps all the blood flowing in the proper direction with a series of one-way valves. And you'll see what causes his heart to contract in the first place. Plus, you'll see how the coronary blood vessels, the plumbing lines that supply blood and oxygen to the muscles of the heart itself, can become blocked by a blood clot and cause a heart attack, or what the doctors call a myocardial infarction. Afterwards, we'll see A.D.A.M in the doctor's office, checking to make certain he maintains the normal blood pressure that is important for his health. But before A.D.A.M goes under the illustrator's knife, he wants to tell you a bit about his cardiovascular plumbing, as well as how his blood clots when that plumbing is damaged. He'll also show you how his cardiovascular system functions in his overall strategy for getting oxygen to his tissues and for removing their metabolic waste products. To see a quick overview of the cardiovascular system, click on the picture.
Today's active and animated humans are especially conscious of maintaining a healthy cardiovascular system. While the heart, which is a powerful automatic pump, is the cardiovascular component we think of most often, the blood and the blood vessels are also vital to my health. My blood volume is a critically important 5 to 6 liters of liquid that transports oxygen and essential nutrients to all of the living cells in my body, and also carries waste products to systems that eliminate them.
Most of A.D.A.M's blood is made up of a watery, protein-laden fluid called plasma. A little less than half of his blood volume is composed of red and white blood cells and other solid elements called platelets. Platelets are important in helping A.D.A.M's blood to clot, so that he doesn't need a blood transfusion every time he cuts himself slicing a bagel. You can see how clotting worked for A.D.A.M when he got careless in the kitchen by clicking on the picture to the right.
Ouch! Oh, maybe I should have stuck with whole wheat toast. Each of my fingers has numerous small blood arteries that were waiting for the knife to attack. Today, I've selected my thumb. Here's a cut section of a small artery. The traffic going by includes red blood cells carrying oxygen, platelets, which come from white blood cell fragments, and clotting factors, which are the little yellow guys that help my blood to clot.
The cut from the knife broke my intact skin, and you can see the blood cells and fluid oozing out.
Adam.
The cut also exposes the collagen fibers in my tissue, which begins the clotting process. As platelets begin to adhere to the cut edges, they release chemicals to attract even more platelets. Eventually, a platelet plug is formed, and the external bleeding stops. Inside, the clotting factors take a much more active role by creating a cascade of clotting activity. The clotting factors cause strands of blood-borne material, called fibrin, to stick together and seal the inside of the wound. Eventually, the cut blood vessel heals, and the blood clot dissolves after several days. Toast, anyone? Blood vessels, including the arteries, veins, and capillaries, are the biological plumbing through which my blood flows. To see the inside story on the path my blood takes, click on the picture. As my heart pumps, my arteries carry oxygen-rich blood, shown here in red, away from the heart and toward my body's tissues and vital organs. These include my brain, liver, kidneys, stomach, and muscles, even the heart muscle itself. At the same time, my veins carry oxygen-poor blood, shown here in blue, from my tissues back toward my heart. From there, it passes to my lungs to receive more oxygen. This cycle repeats itself when oxygen-rich blood returns to the heart from the lungs, which pumps it throughout the body. My tiniest branching arteries, called arterioles, connect to minuscule structures called capillaries. Capillaries are so numerous that you can find one near every cell in my body. Of course, you'd have to use a microscope to see them. It is in these tiny blood vessels that my red blood cells release oxygen and pick up carbon dioxide and waste products from my body's tissues. You can see this exchange in the next animation by clicking on the picture. My red blood cells are my oxygen carriers. As they travel away from the heart, they traverse smaller and smaller arteries, finally arriving at the collections of microscopic blood vessels known as capillaries. My capillaries contain a high concentration of oxygen and nutrients, while my tissues contain a lower concentration. Through a process called diffusion, these particles leave the capillaries and enter my tissues. Conversely, my body tissues contain high concentrations of carbon dioxide and metabolic waste, while my capillaries contain a lower concentration. In this case, waste products diffuse from my tissues into my capillaries and from there are carried by my venous system back toward the heart. The waste products are eventually eliminated from the bloodstream through the urinary and respiratory systems. Nutrient exchange is a continuous cycle that is critical for my survival.
The illustrators are ready to demonstrate the cardiac cycle now. So we're going to start your illusthesia. You won't feel a thing. See you in a while, Adam.
199, 98.
Adam's out now. So we can proceed by opening his chest and showing you how his heart works. Just click on the picture to see the cardiac cycle. Here are Adam's heart and great vessels. Anatomically speaking, you can see that they look more like a California freeway system than a box of Valentine's candy. Here are the 4 chambers of his heart: the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. The great vessels that you see include the superior and inferior vena cava, which bring blood from the body to the heart. The pulmonary artery transports blood to his lungs, while the aorta is the body's largest artery. Adam's heart pumps oxygen-rich blood out through his aorta to the rest of his body. Here we've illustrated away some of the tough fibrous coating of the heart and great vessels so you can get a better look at Adam's heart beating. If you look carefully, you can see a series of one-way valves that keep his blood flowing in one direction. We can label those valves for you. Let's see. That's better. Just from this brief view, you can see that cardiac surgeons really have a lot of very complicated plumbing to think about. They're going to inject some green dye into Adam's superior vena cava, so we can watch it pass through his heart as it goes through the cardiac cycle. Now we can trace the actual path of Adam's blood through his heart. First, his blood enters the right atrium. A contraction of his right atrium then forces blood through his tricuspid valve and into his right ventricle. When his right ventricle contracts, the muscular force pushes blood through the pulmonary semilunar valve into his pulmonary artery. His blood then travels to his lungs, where it receives oxygen. Next, it drains out of the lungs via the pulmonary veins and travels to the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood is forced through the bicuspid valve into the critically important left ventricle. The left ventricle is the major muscular pump that sends his blood out to his body systems. When the left ventricle contracts, it forces Adam's blood through his aortic semilunar valves and into his aorta. The aorta and its branches carry blood to all the tissues of Adam's body.
I've always wondered how my heart pumped my blood. But what makes my heart beat in the first place?
To learn what causes Adam's heart to beat, click on the picture. Let's take a closer look inside Adam's heart. The yellow objects you see on the left are not nerves. They're actually specialized cardiac muscle cells in the walls of Adam's heart. Their job is to send signals to the rest of the heart muscle and cause a contraction. Together, this group of cells is called the cardiac conduction system. The main components of the cardiac conduction system are the SA node, AV node, bundle of His, bundle branches, and Purkinje fibers. Let's follow a signal through the contraction process. The SA node starts the sequence by causing the atrial muscles to contract. That's why doctors sometimes call it the anatomical pacemaker. From there, the signal travels to the AV node, through the bundle of His, down the bundle branches, and through the Purkinje fibers, causing the ventricles to contract. The signal creates an electrical current that can be seen on a graph called an electrocardiogram, or EKG. Doctors use an EKG as a way of seeing how well the cardiac conduction system works. Any changes to the EKG could mean serious problems. Adam's heart is so critical to his survival, yet it can be damaged by factors as commonplace as stress, lack of exercise, and poor nutritional habits. The heart is a very hard-working muscle and requires lots of oxygen. As oxygenated blood gets pumped out of Adam's left ventricle and into his aorta, its first branches, the left and right coronary arteries, enter the heart, providing it with oxygenated blood. Let's see what happens when those coronary arteries develop some animated problems by clicking on the picture. We can begin by making a classic illustrator's incision into the chest wall, exposing the lungs and pericardium,
which is the fibrous covering of the heart. And now we can see the heart actually beating inside the chest cavity. There's the left coronary artery up close, and the right one as well. They supply blood to specific regions of the heart. Damage to or blockage in either of these vessels can injure the wall of the heart. If we focus in on the left coronary artery, you can see the red blood cells traveling through it. But if the inner wall of the coronary artery becomes damaged, cholesterol plaque can build up, progressively narrowing the available pathway through which blood can flow. Clotted blood attempting to traverse the blood vessel may find it tortuous and too narrow for passage, and the artery may become completely constricted or blocked off. This is a major medical event that poses great danger. The blocked artery results in a lack of oxygen or ischemia to the part of the heart muscle that the artery supplies. The result is a heart attack.
Let's take a look at some actual video footage of a heart that's developed severe blockage of the coronary arteries. In this surgical view, we can see the heart beating. It's surrounded by a green cloth, which is used to preserve a sterile environment. The cream-colored material covering the heart is fat. This patient has an excessive amount that was probably caused by a high-fat diet. Now we're looking at a close-up view of a coronary artery. The surgeons have opened up the artery and are pulling out a long piece of plaque, which was obstructing the flow of blood to the heart muscle. Plaque buildup in the coronary arteries usually leads to a heart attack, which is the #1 cause of death each year in the United States.
After a heart attack, medical doctors can only try to manage what sound preventive care might have avoided or delayed. But A.D.A.M is someone who watches his cardiac health with the help of his physicians. His blood pressure examination is an important component of that regimen. To see the inside story on blood pressure, click the picture. Normal blood pressure is important for proper blood flow to the body's organs and tissues. Each heartbeat forces blood to the rest of the body. Blood pressure moves from high pressure near the heart to low pressure away from the heart. The force of the blood on the walls of the arteries is called blood pressure. Blood pressure depends on many factors, including the amount of blood pumped by the heart. The diameter of the arteries through which blood is pumped is also an important factor. Blood pressure is measured both as the heart contracts, which is called systole, and as it relaxes, which is called diastole. Systolic pressure is measured when the heart ventricles contract. Diastolic pressure is measured when the heart ventricles relax. A systolic blood pressure of 120 millimeters of mercury is considered right in the middle of the range of normal blood pressures, as is a diastolic pressure of 80. Stressful situations can result in a temporary increase in blood pressure.
Sir, this citation is for traveling 50 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone and for not wearing proper footwear while driving.
If A.D.A.M had a consistent blood pressure reading of 140/90, he would be evaluated for having high blood pressure. If left untreated, high blood pressure could damage important organs, such as his brain and kidneys.
My blood pressure exam turned out just fine, and Eve really did a great job of pulling me through these cardiac surgery illustrations. I think she deserves a big hand. The inside story is that we really care about each other's hearts. After all, when two hearts beat as one, you've got to take care of them both.
Why, thank you, Adam. That was beautiful. Welcome to the inside story on the digestive system. Adam, would you like to get things started?
I'm hungry. I'll order a pizza and then tell them about my digestive system.
Adam.
Beverage Pizza, Beverage speaking. Order, please.
Yes, hello. I'd like to order a large pepperoni pizza.
Order, please.
He put me on hold. Where should I start?
How about with food?
Oh, right. Food. Food is my energy source, like fuel in a gas tank.
Tank's getting a bit large, Adam. Maybe you should make that a small pizza.
Beverage Pizza, Beverage speaking.
Make that a small pizza.
Order, please.
Now, my digestive system. I have a normal appetite. It's my healthy desire for the food that I need to maintain myself and do work. My basic digestive strategy is to take the food that I eat, break it down into simple substances that my body can use, and get them into my blood. From there, nutrients travel to my brain, heart, liver, muscles, and other organs, all of which require energy. I actually have a special region in my brain that sends me signals letting me know that I'm hungry and should eat. When it does, I go and get the food I want, then I put it in my mouth.
Let's show them the inside story. How about the animations of your swallowing and digestive process?
Sure, I'll do it if they click nicely. If you click on the picture, you'll see some live-action animations of me eating and digesting that even my mother has never seen. You can see just from looking at this picture of my brain how open-minded I am about what I eat. I use my teeth to grind and chop up my food into tiny pieces, while the glands in my mouth moisten the food with saliva. Then, my tongue pushes the moistened food, which is called a bolus, to the back of my throat and down into my esophagus, which leads to my stomach. For you real digestive voyeurs,
Ooh la la.
here it is again, step by step. This celery is terrible.
But it's good for you.
Can you guys draw me a brownie instead?
Adam.
First, my tongue pushes food into my throat. Of course, if you have little children, like our nephew, then you know that a tongue can just as easily push the food back out of the mouth and onto a good tie.
Now, Adam, just continue with the digestive process.
Okay. There's my epiglottis. It's an important small flap of tissue. In the second stage of swallowing, it folds over my voice box at the entrance to my windpipe. That way, food doesn't go down the wrong way. In the final stage, my esophagus contracts and moves food toward my stomach.
Adam.
Excuse me.
Tell them about the time you were eating some celery at a cocktail party and you were laughing so hard at your own joke that you started to choke.
Well, golly gee, thanks for that impersonal reminder.
Adam, to see what happens when food takes the wrong path, click on the picture.
Don't tell me to click on the picture, tell them.
My food normally goes down my esophagus. I was talking a bit too enthusiastically while I was eating one time, so some food went down my trachea instead.
Actually, he couldn't breathe or even talk. He just pointed to his throat and seemed panicked. But our friend got right behind him and performed the Heimlich maneuver. After a few abdominal thrusts, the food came right out.
Anybody have a towel?
The Heimlich maneuver is a technique that can help save the life of a choking victim. In some choking cases, a foreign body may partially or completely block the airway. With complete airway blockage, the victim is unable to speak, breathe, or cough, and he may clutch his neck between his thumb and fingers. Recognize this as a universal distress sign for choking. If someone is conscious and choking, ask him if he is choking.
Are you choking?
If the victim cannot cough or speak in response, you may assume a complete airway blockage. Your next action is to perform the abdominal thrust known as the Heimlich maneuver. This procedure is designed to create an artificial cough which will expel the foreign body from the airway. Stand behind him and wrap your arms around his waist, making a fist with one hand. Place the thumb side of your fist against the middle of the victim's abdomen, slightly above the navel and well below the tip of his sternum. Grasp your fist with the other hand, then quickly press your fist against the victim's abdomen with sharp upward thrusts. Repeat the thrusts until the object is expelled or the victim becomes unconscious. If he becomes unconscious, place him so he is lying on a firm, flat surface. Next, notify the emergency medical system.
It's a bit embarrassing, but if not for the Heimlich maneuver, I wouldn't be here today. On the other hand, if you'd like to see what happens when food is swallowed and digested properly, just click on the picture. My stomach churns my food and breaks it down with hydrochloric acid and an enzyme called pepsin. Here comes the celery I just ate. And they're coming around the greater curve. There's celery by a head, banana coming up through the bunch.
This is hard enough to swallow without you calling the clubhouse turn.
I think it's more like a club sandwich turn.
Oh, boy.
The food that I eat remains in my stomach for several hours. Once it leaves, it goes to my duodenum, the first part of my small intestine. Here, I use digestive bile from my gallbladder and enzymes from my pancreas to break it down some more. Enzymes are chemicals which my body makes to speed up the digestion of specific types of food. For instance, trypsin breaks down the protein in the steak I eat. And lipase helps to break down the fat. Human beings don't have enzymes to break down certain plant fibers, which is why we can't digest them.
There's also an enzyme called lactase that breaks down the sugar in milk. Like many other adults, A.D.A.M doesn't make that enzyme anymore. So when he eats ice cream or yogurt, his digestive system gets bloated, expels gas, and makes noises like a marching band.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Anyway, once everything is broken down, I can absorb the nutrients that I need using about 20 feet of intestinal plumbing. From there, the nutrients go into my bloodstream and to my liver, where poisons are removed. Undigested food and water continue through my small intestine and go into my large intestine, where the water is reabsorbed. Then, at the end of the line, I ship out a waste product that I imagine you're all pretty familiar with. Okay, that's how my food is broken down. But how does it move through my intestines? Click on the picture to find out.
Without peristalsis, swallowing and digesting food would be a challenging activity. That's because peristalsis is a series of wave-like muscle contractions that moves food like a conveyor belt to different processing stations in the digestive tract. The process begins in A.D.A.M's esophagus when he swallows. Then it continues in his stomach where the food is squeezed and stirred into a liquid mixture called chyme. Next, peristalsis continues in the small intestine. We'll take a piece of intestine and stretch it out so you can see the wave-like movements better. Peristalsis mixes the chyme back and forth, allowing nutrients to be absorbed into A.D.A.M's bloodstream through the small intestine walls. Peristalsis concludes in the large intestine where water from the undigested food material is absorbed into Adam's bloodstream. And of course, you know what happens to the indigestible part. Don't you want to tell them what happens when water isn't reabsorbed in the large intestine? Remember that time we went camping in the mountains and you drank some water straight from the lake without filtering it?
I think that these people can figure that one out for themselves.
Oh.
You know, I've been on hold for this pizza for a long time. I wonder if they forgot about me.
Pepe's Pizza, Pepe speaking.
Where's my pizza?
He's on the way, senor.
Thank you. I'll get it.
Pizza delivery.
Now that's service. Didn't I just speak to you on the, well, never mind.
Thank you for choosing Pepe's. Have a nice day.
Pizza.
Honey, why did you order pepperoni? You know that it gives you heartburn. Well, you may as well eat a slice while I tell them what happens.
Okay.
To see the inside story on heartburn, click on the picture. The last time Adam ate pepperoni, he had heartburn for hours. Actually, heartburn really has nothing to do with the heart itself. It's a pain in the chest and a burning in the esophagus, which just happens to be pretty close to where the heart is located. Here goes the pizza. It's passing from his mouth to his esophagus and on to his stomach. The junction between his stomach and esophagus normally keeps his food and stomach acid from coming back up on him. Certain foods may affect the junction, making it less effective. That's how trouble begins. Adam's stomach produces hydrochloric acid to digest his food. Adam's stomach has a mucus lining that protects it from hydrochloric acid, but his esophagus does not. Sometimes food and stomach acid regurgitate into his esophagus, causing a burning feeling. This feeling is known as heartburn. Antacids relieve heartburn by making stomach acid less acidic. As I recall, it took quite a few antacid tablets to make Adam feel better. Adam felt pretty bad from the pepperoni, so he took a nap. Oh, are you feeling a little better?
Yes, thank you. Did the phone ring while I was resting?
Yes, Greg, the head medical illustrator, called. Are you sure you want to know what he called about?
This is going to be bad, isn't it?
Well, he wants you to star in a CD-ROM called A.D.A.M Sports Injuries. You're gonna go rollerblading in the Rocky Mountains and kayaking over Niagara Falls.
Is Greg trying to purposely give me an ulcer?
Just relax. You know how budgets are. They'll probably settle on baseball and tennis. Besides, some doctors don't think stress causes ulcers anymore. Ulcers may result from that Helicobacter bacteria we read about in the newspaper article.
Helicobacter, Helicobacter, what an odd couple of words. All I know is I have a sensitive stomach and my family gets stomach ulcers and I don't want one.
Well, if you would like to see the inside story on stomach ulcers, click on the picture.
Can't judge the health of my stomach from the outside, even with my fabulous torso.
Ooh, baby.
And now for a really, really great shoe, an illustrated interpretation of stomach ulcer pain. Inside my own stomach, acid is digesting me. My stomach produces acid that breaks down food into simple substances. The inside wall of my stomach is protected from the acid by a mucus lining. If the mucus lining becomes too thin, an ulcer may form. A common symptom of ulcers is bleeding. On rare occasions, an ulcer will completely erode the stomach wall. Some researchers believe that ulcers are caused by bacteria, not stress. Antibiotics may be used to control the bacteria believed to cause ulcers.
There's nothing to worry about, Adam. You just have a little gastritis. Is there anything else you want to add about the digestive system before we leave?
Well, maybe just an appendix about my appendix. You know, it reminds me a bit of your brother. It's long, thin, and hollow, and nobody knows exactly what its function is.
Let's be fair, okay?
Okay, you're right. Actually, the significance of the appendix is that fecal material may occasionally get trapped in it, causing inflammation and infection, which the doctors call appendicitis. Then it's sayonara to the appendix, just like it's sayonara for us right now.
Sayonara.
Welcome to the Inside Story on the endocrine system. Hey, Adam, I need you to help me out by donating your hormones to a worthy cause.
That sounds terrific.
Oh, sorry, Adam. Great thought. Wrong cause. I volunteered us for an exhibit at the community health fair.
Oh, no.
We're in the endocrine system booth. I need you to explain your hormones as part of the presentation.
Oh.
Look at all the people who came to the health fair this year.
Do I have to do this?
For Adam to mature and function throughout life, Adam requires a great deal of communication between his brain and other organs throughout his body. Adam's nervous system and its wiring are responsible for some of this communication, but much of it occurs via chemical messengers that are part of his endocrine system.
Hey, he's wearing underwear made out of leaves. I want some underwear made out of leaves, too.
It's okay, Jimmy. This is a science exhibit. He's wearing those clothes so you can learn about his body parts. You people are disgusting.
See? What did I tell you?
To see an animation on the components of the endocrine system, click the picture.
My endocrine system is primarily composed of glands that produce chemical messengers called hormones. They're made in one part of my body and then travel to other locations through my bloodstream. My most important endocrine glands are my pituitary gland, my thyroid gland, my parathyroid glands, my thymus, my adrenal glands, and my pancreas.
Adam's endocrine and nervous systems actually work very closely together. His brain continuously sends instructions to his endocrine system and in return receives feedback from them. This process continues around the clock throughout Adam's life. Because of this intimate relationship, Adam's nervous and endocrine systems are referred to as his neuroendocrine system. Let's take a look at his hypothalamus. It's known as the master switchboard because it's the part of Adam's brain that controls his endocrine system. That pea-sized structure hanging by a thin stalk from his hypothalamus is his pituitary gland. It's called the master gland of his body because it regulates the activity of his endocrine glands.
My hypothalamus sends either hormonal or electrical messages to my pituitary gland. In turn, my pituitary gland releases hormones which travel through my bloodstream to my endocrine glands.
Here's how Adam's endocrine system keeps itself in check. Eventually, his hypothalamus detects the rising level of the target organ's hormones and sends a message to his pituitary gland. His pituitary gland releases a hormone into the bloodstream that causes the target organ to stop producing its hormones.
The endocrine system constantly adjusts Adam's hormone levels so that his body can function normally. This process is called homeostasis.
What's this?
Homeostasis, Adam. It's the state of balance we need inside us to keep our bodies running smoothly. To see an animation on homeostasis, click the picture. Homeostasis is a state of balance inside your body, where your body's systems work together to keep you functioning normally. Adam's endocrine system keeps this internal balancing act going by releasing chemicals called hormones. The release of the hormones is controlled by negative feedback mechanisms. A negative feedback mechanism works something like a thermostat in your home. Let's look. A thermostat helps maintain a constant temperature. Think of that as the normal range. When the temperature rises beyond the normal range, the thermostat turns on the air conditioner. Eventually, the air conditioner restores the temperature to the normal range. That's negative feedback. You start with the normal range, you go beyond the normal range, and then back to normal again. Now, let's look at how this mechanism works in the body. One example is how the endocrine system controls the amount of sugar in the bloodstream. Insulin is a hormone secreted by the pancreas that maintains a normal amount of sugar in the bloodstream. Shortly after Adam eats a candy bar, tiny sugar molecules enter his bloodstream, raising his blood sugar levels. In response, his pancreas secretes the insulin into his bloodstream. Now, the sugar molecules move out of his bloodstream and in to the cells of his skeletal muscle, fat, and liver. In turn, Adam's blood sugar levels return to normal. And that's how a negative feedback mechanism works to maintain the body's internal balance.
Whew. It's good to be at homeostasis again. As you saw, homeostasis maintains a system of checks and balances on my endocrine glands. If it didn't, I could have some very serious problems.
Well, I must admit that you've shown us a lot of useful information. By the way, I apologize for being so rude earlier.
That's okay. We sometimes get that reaction. It's understandable.
I like what you people are doing. Children should be exposed to the health sciences while they're young.
Adam, why don't you continue our presentation on the endocrine system?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, come here, my boy, and I'll tell you a story about my pituitary gland.
To see the inside story on Adam's pituitary gland, click on the picture.
Here's my pituitary gland. The illustrators will enlarge it for you. There, that's better.
And there's Adam's hypothalamus directly above. His hypothalamus decides which hormones his pituitary should release by sending it either hormonal or electrical messages.
Growth hormone acts on muscle and bone, increasing the size of both.
If Adam had received insufficient growth hormone during childhood, he would have a condition called pituitary dwarfism. If he had received too much growth hormone as a child, he would have a condition called gigantism. Adam is going to continue being a good sport, and let us morph his facial features. Too much growth hormone exerting its effects on a body that has already matured physically results in a condition called acromegaly. Here, facial features become rough and coarse, the voice becomes deeper, and hand, foot, and skull size expand. Thanks, Adam.
Oh, anytime, Eve. In response to hormonal commands from my hypothalamus, my pituitary gland releases a hormone called thyroid-stimulating hormone, or TSH. TSH stimulates my thyroid gland to release its own hormones, called T3 and T4. These hormones travel through my bloodstream to stimulate the metabolism in other cells throughout my body.
Adam's pituitary can also release a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, that affects the production of urine. ADH is produced in his hypothalamus and is transported to his pituitary, where it's stored. When ADH is released by the pituitary, it delivers a message to Adam's kidneys, causing it to become water conservation-minded. His kidney then absorbs more of the fluid that passes through it. As a result, less urine is produced.
Because alcohol inhibits the release of ADH by the pituitary, drinking beer or other alcoholic beverages results in increased urine production.
My pituitary gland produces other hormones as well. Follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH, and luteinizing hormone, or LH, are hormones which affect my ovaries and egg production. In Adam's case, these same hormones affect his testes and sperm production. Prolactin is a hormone that affects breast tissue in nursing mothers. ACTH, which is shorthand for a hormone with a name that's far too difficult to pronounce, causes my adrenal glands to produce important substances that have properties similar to steroids. Growth, puberty, baldness, even sensations like hunger and thirst are just a few examples of the processes that are under the influence of our endocrine system.
Thank you both for taking the time to explain the endocrine system.
You're welcome.
I want some underwear made out of leaves.
Okay, Timmy. Speaking of leaves, I think we better be going. Goodbye. Wouldn't you like a nice ice cream cone instead?
No.
How about a pretzel?
No.
How about nothing at all?
No.
Bye.
What a day.
But you know, I have to admit that this health fair was kind of fun.
You were just great, Adam. I always knew you were good with children. Which reminds me, do I remember you're having an interest in another system earlier today?
Now that you mention it.
I told you these hormone lectures would come in handy.
Welcome to the Inside Story on the Immune System. This weekend, our niece Yvette has come over to visit with us. She and Eve are in the family room right now doing the crossword puzzles. Hey guys, how's it going in there?
Aunt Eve, this crossword puzzle is tough. I'm still stuck on 4 down. It has 8 letters meaning exempt from detrimental effects. It begins with an I and the 5th letter is an N.
Ouch!
Try impunity or immunity.
Well, they both fit, but I'm not sure I understand very much about either one.
You know how some international representatives can park their cars and never get towed? That's impunity.
Oh, that's not impunity. That's diplomacy. This is impunity.
My fellow Americans, let me make this perfectly clear. I am not a crook.
Nice job. You didn't know your Uncle Adam was an impersonator, did you? Should we give him immunity from the critics?
Oh, pardon me.
Adam, maybe we should just teach our favorite niece about biological immunity and the human immune system.
Yvette, I'll give you an overview of immunity. Then, if you really want to study its essentials, you can view the immune and lymphatic systems more comprehensively in your school library.
Okay, Uncle Adam, let's get the inside story.
For human beings, biological immunity means being protected from disease. What you see before you is not just your loving uncle, but a battlefield. Every day there are constant battles being waged between my immune system and countless foreign germ invaders that want to take over my body.
Could you be a little more specific?
Actually, I have 2 lines of defense against foreign invasion. It's called non-specific immunity. For example, my unbroken skin is a formidable non-specific defense mechanism. Also, when I cough or sneeze, my mucous membranes are defending against invasion by all foreign organisms as opposed to specific organisms. The same thing happens when I release acid in my stomach. The digestive chemicals are another line of defense.
Does that mean that every time your stomach growls, you're being a war hero?
Well, now, I'm immune to that comment, Pilgrim.
Sorry.
The first time my body encounters a new foreign invader, the only immediate response I can have is nonspecific. If that invader gets past my first line of defense, I have other nonspecific mechanisms. For instance, my white blood cells will attempt to surround, ingest, and destroy it. The cells which carry out this process are called phagocytes, which means they like to munch on other cells and can ingest bacteria and other foreign invaders. You can see what this looks like for yourself by clicking on the picture. The blue cells with irregular shapes are macrophages, one of two classes of phagocytes. Macrophages are scavenger cells that can ingest dead tissue and foreign cells. The macrophages form tentacles called pseudopods to surround them. Once inside the macrophage, the invader is walled off and then digested and destroyed by a bag of digestive chemicals, or enzymes. That's how phagocytosis kills invaders the first time my body encounters them. If my body sees that invader a second time around, I can use my specific immune defenses. And even though the invader may have only attacked me at one local site in our previous encounter, my entire immune system can react to seeing it again.
How can your immune system remember that?
It greatly depends on a type of white blood cell called lymphocyte.
Lymph who?
Lymphocytes. These are formed in lymphatic tissues and are actually part of a larger system called my lymphatic system, which includes lymph nodes, the spleen, and the tonsils. Your Aunt Eve can talk to you later about the role of the lymphatic system in the spread of breast cancer and other diseases. But in terms of immunity, the lymphocytes give our immune system its memory, as well as its ability to respond specifically to foreign invaders. To see the inside story on immunity, click on the picture. My immune system is comprised of specialized white blood cells, called lymphocytes, that adapt themselves to fight specific foreign invaders. These cells develop into two groups in my bone marrow. From there, one group of lymphocytes migrates to a gland called the thymus and become T lymphocytes, or T cells. Within the thymus, my T cells mature under the influence of several hormones. When matured, the T cell types are ready to work together to directly attack foreign invaders, providing what my physicians call cell-mediated immunity. This type of immunity is deficient in persons with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The other group of lymphocytes, B lymphocytes, mature and develop within the bone marrow itself. In that process, they achieve the ability to recognize specific foreign invaders. From the bone marrow, B cells migrate through my body fluids to my lymph nodes, spleen, and blood. Because the Latin word for body fluids was humors, we still say that B lymphocytes provide us humoral immunity as they circulate in our fluids in search of specific foreign invaders to destroy.
Nice explanation, Adam. I feel like Dorothy in the poppy fields. Sleep, sleep, sleep.
Well, your explanations are so very interesting that maybe you'd like to tell her about vaccinations. Maybe I could give you a shot in the old...
Never mind, my love. You were saying...
Vaccinations are a part of a strategy. My doctor uses them to provide me with a memory against a specific invader or antigen that I might have trouble fighting off the first time it attacks me. You know, like measles or smallpox or diphtheria. Vaccines may contain specially altered live antigens, or they may be comprised of dead or weakened antigen parts. In either case, the vaccine helps create a cell-mediated memory that we can use to fight off the full-strength invader if we are attacked by it. To see the inside story on vaccinations, click on the picture. Ouch! Vaccinations are injections of antigens into the body. The antigens in the vaccine are those little green guys. Once they enter my blood, you can see them circulating along with my B and T cells. As the antigens invade my tissues, they attract the attention of my macrophages, those nonspecific scavengers I mentioned earlier, and get eaten by them. The macrophages signal the T cells that antigens are invading. The T cells respond by attacking the invading antigen. Finally, the suppressor T cells stop the attack. The end result is that after a vaccination, I have a lasting memory of an encounter with a potentially dangerous invader, and hopefully have a better ability to fight it off if I'm ever exposed to them again in greater numbers.
Cool. So it's kind of like getting a pretest in school. You learn about the questions, you figure out all the answers, and remember it for the real test, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose it is cool.
So, the stronger our immune system, the better off we are.
In general, yes, but with the immune system, there can be too much of a good thing. It can overreact to certain foreign invaders, as in the case of seasonal allergies or bee stings, and it can also react against our own bodies, which results in what doctors call autoimmune disease. For instance, my allergy to pollen each spring is a very unpleasant immune system overreaction to a memory of previous pollen encounters. You can see it by clicking on the allergy animation. Allergens, like pollen, are nothing more than foreign plant antigens. When they get released into the air, you can see and hear the result.
Or get sprayed with it if you're standing in the wrong place. As part of A.D.A.M's nonspecific immune defense, the stimulus for sneezing gets triggered when allergens first enter his nasal tissue. Pollen allergens encounter the plasma cells in his nose, which respond by producing antibodies. These antibodies attach to his mast cells, which are white blood cells containing the chemical histamine. As more antibodies are produced, they cause the mast cells to release histamine. Histamine then produces A.D.A.M's allergy symptoms. His stuffy and runny nose, sneezing and watery eyes not only give him seasonal charm, but help to remove the invading pollen. The effect of histamine is sometimes so bad that A.D.A.M takes medication called antihistamines to make his allergies less severe.
Gesundheit.
Come on, Yvette. Let's let A.D.A.M get some rest. We can go back to doing the crossword puzzle. Or if you want to learn about the lymphatic system and how it relates to the immune system, I'm available. Welcome to the inside story on the integumentary system. Time for some of the naked truth.
Now listen, you are getting me to do this by the skin of your teeth, so please don't embarrass me.
Oh, don't take it so personally. Everyone has skin. It's essential for our survival. Here, I'll lend you a hand by showing them my skin.
Great.
If you click on the picture, you'll get the inside skin story. Everyone has lots of skin. In fact, it's our largest organ. About 6 pounds of skin covers 18 square feet on an average person. This cross-sectional view,
The one that looks like tricolored dessert?
that's my skin seen in its full thickness. The top layer is called the epidermis. It's very hard working because it protects the underlying skin layers from the outside environment. It has cells that make keratin, a substance that waterproofs and strengthens the skin. It also has cells that contain melanin, the dark pigment that gives skin its color. Other cells in the epidermis allow us to feel touch and provide us with immunity against foreign invaders like germs and bacteria. The very bottom layer of the skin is the hypodermis. It contains the fat cells or adipose tissue that insulate my body and help it conserve heat. The layer between the epidermis and the hypodermis is the dermis, often called the true skin. It contains the cells that give skin strength, support, and flexibility. As we age, the cells in our dermis lose their strength and flexibility, and our skin loses its youthful appearance.
I'll say.
These are sensory receptors in the dermis. They allow me to receive stimulation from the outside environment and let me experience pressure, pain, and temperature. You can see the blood vessels that provide the skin with nutrients and remove its waste products. Sebaceous glands produce the oil in my skin, which keeps it from drying out. The oil from my sebaceous glands also helps to soften my hair and kill bacteria that gets in my pores. These oil glands are all over my body, except on my hands and feet. If they were there, I would probably be dropping things and slipping on the floor all the time.
An important part of the skin that you didn't mention is the sweat gland.
Oh, right. There are two kinds. One type, my apocrine sweat glands, are located in the armpits, around the nipples, and the genital region. They become active after puberty and release substances called pheromones that seem to provide A.D.A.M and myself with a chemical attraction, if you know what I mean.
Let's just move right along to the other kind of sweat gland.
Oh.
The eccrine glands, which make sweat the old-fashioned way.
If you would like to see the inside story on eccrine sweat glands, click on the picture to play the animation.
Eve has more than 2.5 million eccrine sweat glands all over her body. They lie deep in her skin and are connected to the surface by coiled tubes called ducts. She perspires continuously,
A.D.A.M?
whether she exercises or not, releasing a liquid mixture that is 99% water and 1% salt and fat. Up to a quart of liquid a day can evaporate through her sweat glands. In conditions where her body becomes overheated, she sweats, which evaporates and cools her body. Eve occasionally becomes frightened or nervous.
Ugh!
Then she begins to sweat on her palms and forehead, as well as the soles of her feet and her armpits.
Help!
These are the sites where her sweat glands are most abundant. Here, let me help you, Eve.
Oh, thanks a lot, A.D.A.M. These days, A.D.A.M.'s skin looks pretty clear. But here's a photo A.D.A.M.'s mother gave me from his junior high school days. He definitely had his acne period. That's because his sebaceous glands became very active during puberty. Like most teenage boys, A.D.A.M.'s hormones were pretty active. They told the sebaceous glands, which empty into the base of his hair follicles, to produce a mixture of fat and wax called sebum. Of course, his hormones told him a lot of other things as well. But the good news is that most of his acne is gone, although he still gets an occasional pimple on his back or shoulders.
You had to tell him.
Let's forget about your acne and get outside to the beach. If you would like to meet us at the shore to talk about skin in the sun, click the picture to play the animation. Can't talk about skin without thinking about the sun. The skin uses sunlight to help manufacture vitamin D, which is important for normal bone formation. But sometimes its ultraviolet light can be very detrimental. Within the skin's epidermal, or outer layer, are cells that contain the pigment melanin. Melanin protects me from the sun's ultraviolet rays, which can burn the skin and which over time could reduce its elasticity and cause me to age prematurely. Suntanning occurs because exposure to sunlight causes my skin to produce more melanin and to darken. The tan fades as these cells move toward the surface and are sloughed off. Sunlight is beneficial in limited amounts and with proper protection from overexposure. Too much exposure to ultraviolet or UV rays can cause sunburn. UV rays penetrate the outer skin layers and pass into the deeper layers, where they can damage or kill skin cells.
People like me who don't have much melanin and who sunburn easily should protect themselves by covering up sensitive areas, wearing sunblock, limiting their total exposure time, and limiting their sun exposure between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Frequent and prolonged exposure to ultraviolet rays over many years is the chief cause of skin cancer, which should not be taken lightly, but is felt to be curable if detected at an early stage.
At the beach, I saw a mole on Eve's back that I thought looked unusual, so now Eve is at the dermatologist's office to have it looked at.
By looking at my skin color and texture, my doctor can tell a lot about my general health. While some skin disorders are associated with illnesses, most common skin disorders such as birthmarks, warts, moles, and age spots usually are not. To learn more, click on the picture to play the animation.
Dr. Morris, dial 118. Dr. Morris, please dial 118.
It amazes me how the models in this magazine have such perfect skin. Adam, it used to be that many individuals tried to hide their moles and other common skin disorders. Moles are colored spots on the skin formed by cells containing the dark pigment melanin. While generally harmless, which is what my mole turned out to be, some moles can change shape and color or start bleeding and require immediate evaluation. Some birthmarks are simply moles that are present at birth. Others result from the rapid growth of blood vessels in a localized area. When I become older, I may get age spots. These are simply patches of increased pigmentation on my skin surface, like freckles.
And warts are another very common type of skin disorder. Viruses are responsible for their occurrence, and they're also very common in witches, frogs, and my mother-in-law.
Adam?
Sorry, Mom.
Welcome to the inside story on the lymphatic system. I'm here at the shoe store with my mother and my niece Yvette. It looks like Mom has made a selection.
I just love this pair, but they feel a little narrow. I guess I could wear them in the morning.
Aunt Eve, I don't get it. Why can she only wear them in the morning?
Grandma Yvonne's been on her feet all day long. Now they're swollen, so she has trouble getting them to fit into narrow shoes. By morning, the swelling will be gone, and these shoes will probably fit her better. The swelling is called A.D.A.M. I'll show you some animations about it when we all get back home. Yvette, I'm glad you asked about Grandma's swollen feet when we were at the shoe store. It gives me a chance to talk with you about the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is very important for maintaining the proper distribution of fluids in my body, as well as for understanding breast cancer, which is something every woman should know about. The lymphatic system is also a vital component of biological immune defense, which Uncle Adam mentioned to you and which we can talk about some more. But let's go feet first and begin with an animation of edema and fluid distribution. Click on the picture. This is my body, and whatever else you might know about it, you should definitely know that it's mostly composed of fluids.
All the cells in my body contain fluid and are surrounded in a type of extracellular fluid as well. In addition, there are approximately 6 liters of blood circulating around my cardiovascular system at any given time, some of which escapes from my blood vessels when passing through my tiny capillaries. The point here is that if all the fluid escaped from my bloodstream and from my cells, tight shoes would be the least of my problems. Fortunately, humans have a secondary circulatory system whose job is to reabsorb any escaped fluid and return it to its proper location via the blood circulation. That secondary circulation is my lymphatic system, which runs parallel to the venous system and empties into it.
Let's take a look at how lymph is formed. Lymph formation occurs at the microscopic level. Here you can see a venule, a lymph capillary, a blood capillary, and an arteriole. As blood flows through the capillaries, the pressure of the fluid, called hydrostatic pressure, forces fluid out of the capillary and into the surrounding tissue. The fluid that leaks out contains oxygen and nutrients which diffuse into the tissue. The tissue contains carbon dioxide and cellular waste products which diffuse back into the bloodstream. During this process, most of the fluid is reabsorbed by the blood capillaries. The remaining fluid is reabsorbed by the lymph capillaries, or as in Grandma Yvonne's case, the capillaries do not reabsorb the lymph and she has some swelling or edema.
Because edema could be a sign of health problems with her heart and blood circulation, Grandma Yvonne saw a physician about it. But in her case, the edema was mild, and she really had nothing to worry about. But the lymphatic system can play a very worrisome role in the spread of breast cancer, something that can be very dangerous to all women. Components of the lymphatic system, known as lymph nodes, are distributed at specific locations throughout the body, such as the armpits and high in the throat. There is also extensive lymphatic circulation in every woman's breast tissue, which is important in regulating the local fluid balance, as well as in filtering out harmful substances. Unfortunately, diseases such as cancer can use the breast's lymphatic system to travel through the body. For example, if cancerous breast cells invade one of these lymphatic vessels, they inadvertently supply the cancerous cells with access to a highway along which the cells can move quickly. Once the cancer cells move to other parts of the body, the disease becomes much more uncertain and difficult to treat. Here on this mammogram, you can actually see a tumor and the lymph vessel network it's invaded. No woman is too young to know that regular breast self-examinations can help to catch tumors earlier in their growth, hopefully before they spread quickly or metastasize.
That's pretty heavy stuff, Aunt Eve. I've been thinking that I almost wish I didn't have a lymphatic system.
I can understand your feelings, Yvette. Breast cancer can be a pretty frightening thing, but you still wouldn't want to wish away your lymphatic system because the lymphatic system includes our B and T lymphocytes, which give us our biological immunity. In people with AIDS, which is an acquired immune deficiency, the lymphatic cells don't function in our defense, and you certainly understand what that can mean. Anyway, we need our lymph nodes to constantly filter out harmful substances. You can actually feel the nodes getting swollen and tender when we're under attack, like when Uncle Adam got a bad cold last week. You can see it in this next animation. Click on the picture. Adam looked pretty much himself when he woke up, but he didn't look so great by lunchtime. By late in the day, it was Sniffle City, and by bedtime, we could actually feel lumps in his neck. Those lumps were his swollen lymph nodes. Here's an enlargement of one of those lymph nodes. The illustrators have sliced it in half so that you can get a better look. Afferent means towards. Afferent lymph vessels bring unfiltered fluids into the lymph node to be filtered. Efferent means away from. Efferent vessels carry clean fluids away from the lymph node and to the cardiovascular system, where it helps form the plasma in our blood. Overall, it works like a biological filtering system. When our bodies are invaded by foreign organisms, the painful swelling we sometimes feel in our neck, armpits, groin, or tonsils comes from the microorganisms being trapped inside collections of lymph cells or nodes. Eventually, these organisms are destroyed and eliminated by cells that line the walls of the lymph nodes. Then the swelling and pain subside. Here's Adam, looking pretty much himself again. Welcome to the inside story on the muscular system. Right now, I'm getting ready to work out. Adam and I plan to go trekking in the mountains this summer.
We're planning on carrying our own gear in the mountains, so we'll need lots of arm, back, and leg strength. Eva's just about to begin her weightlifting regimen, which consists of anaerobic exercises to increase her skeletal muscle mass. While she lifts, I'm going out running. Running is an aerobic exercise that will strengthen my heart muscle and improve my overall cardiovascular fitness. We'll tell you more about the differences between aerobic and anaerobic exercise later in this part of the family album. Eve and I both possess 3 different types of muscles: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Let's look at an animation of how they function before we begin our workouts. Just click on the picture.
Adam's muscles perform 4 important body functions. They maintain his body posture so that he can walk upright. They stabilize his joints so that he doesn't flop around like a scarecrow. They allow him to move where and when he wants. And they generate heat that his body requires.
We have 3 types of muscles to perform these functions: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of body organs, like the stomach and the small intestine. It's said to be involuntary because it functions without our conscious directions. If our smooth muscles required conscious directions, we would have to focus our concentration on things like digesting our food and passing it through the entire length of our small and large intestines. Another involuntary muscle group, cardiac muscle, is found only in our hearts, where it makes up the heart wall. It has its own specialized electrical conduction system. What this microscopic view doesn't show you is that all of our separate heart muscle fibers act in concert, so that our hearts contract and relax as if they were one enormous muscle.
If cardiac muscle needed conscious instructions to contract and relax, we would have to think about every heartbeat.
Heartbeat, 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 heartbeat.
Our 3rd type of muscle is skeletal muscle, and it's the only type under our voluntary control. Skeletal muscle attaches to and covers our bony skeleton. In this microscopic view, you can see that it has a series of dark and light stripes, or striations. Because of this, it's often called striated muscle.
Of course, it isn't the microscopic view that most of us think about when we think about skeletal muscles. It's important to realize that all of these muscles are under my voluntary control. Otherwise, I'd have trouble with my workout, which would be a big headache.
Excuse me, doesn't Adam look a little pumped up to you? Thanks, that's much better.
Let's talk about the organization of skeletal muscle. You can see how well organized skeletal muscle is by clicking on the picture.
When Adam works out, he increases his bulk and improves the tone of his skeletal muscle. You'll be able to see in these illustrated sections that his muscles organized in a complex array of smaller and smaller structures. Here we've pulled out a unit called a fascicle. Notice that the fascicles are bound together by a type of connective tissue which is called fascia. And from that fascicle we can pull away smaller organizational units called muscle fibers. And from that muscle fiber, even smaller strands called myofibrils. Here you can see the myofibrils move as a muscle's contracting. It's the interaction of these myofibrils as they slide and pull alongside each other that gives skeletal muscle its functional ability to do work and move things. We'll just put them back where they came from so A.D.A.M can use them when he goes running.
Running? I think I'll just stay right here.
Oh, welcome to the inside story on the nervous system.
Be or not to be, that is...
We may have to be a little patient with A.D.A.M today. He's acting a bit nervous. Actually, he's nervous every day because it's his nervous system that lets him think and react. But today, he's especially nervous because he's reading Shakespeare for you. Oh, you're on, Sir A.D.A.M.
What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason. Okay, that's it.
What?
That's enough, Shakespeare. Bye-bye, Hamlet. Hello, ham sandwich.
Come on, A.D.A.M, give it another shot. The deal was that you either cooperate on the cerebrum or you have to pose for the muscular anatomy portrait.
Okay, I'll go back to doing the bard thing.
Good.
Let's see now. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable. What's with you and all this literature stuff anyway? They just want to know about my nervous system to see how I'm wired.
You're right, they do want to know about our wiring, but our human nervous system is what makes us so special. It allows us to speak and understand language, to create works of philosophy, to dance under moonlit skies.
Still, let's get some structure here. Let's look at the architecture of the nervous system. Here's a neuron. It's the basic unit of communication in the nervous system. It generates electrical signals and then it transmits them, like current through an electrical wire. Just play the animation by clicking on the picture and I'll show you more about my neurons, nerves, and nerve conduction. My nervous system is composed of two divisions, each containing billions of neurons. The central nervous system contains my brain and my spinal cord, which is a fibrous rope-like structure. The other division, the peripheral nervous system, consists of thousands of nerves that connect my spinal cord to my muscles and sensory receptors. My peripheral nervous system is responsible for my reflexes, which help me to avoid serious injury, and also for my fight or flight response, which is protective when I'm facing stress or danger.
We'll magnify one of A.D.A.M.'s peripheral nerves so you can examine an individual neuron up close.
Hey, talk about a pain in the... Ouch, ouch! Hey, no respect!
This is not my idea of a great time. Could someone out there please call the Illustration Protection League and let them know that they're experimenting on innocent illustrations in here?
Look, there's your peripheral nerve. Each one of those nerve bundles, or fascicles, contains hundreds of individual nerve fibers. Here's an individual neuron with its dendrites, axon, and cell body. The dendrites are the tree-like structures. Their job is to receive signals from other neurons and from special sensory cells that tell A.D.A.M about the environment. The cell body is the headquarters of the neuron, containing its genetic information in the form of DNA. The axon transmits signals away from the cell body to other neurons.
Certain neurons, called motor neurons, are responsible for voluntary control of the muscles all over my body. Many neurons, including motor neurons, are insulated like pieces of electrical wire. This insulation protects them and also allows their signals to move faster along the axon. Without this insulation, signals from our brain might never reach the outlying muscle groups in our limbs.
In the final analysis, it's the communication between two neurons that really matters. For an electrical signal to travel between two neurons, it must first be converted to a chemical signal, which then crosses a space of about 1/1000th of an inch wide. The space is called a synapse, and the chemical signal is called a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters allow the billions of neurons in A.D.A.M's nervous system to communicate with one another. To illustrate how important this is, let's just say that A.D.A.M wouldn't be quite as animated if his neurons weren't on speaking terms.
Oh, brother, you ain't kidding.
We're not talking about some isolated neuron here. I have a brain, feelings, and emotions, too. Play the brain animation by clicking on the picture to see for yourself.
A.D.A.M's brain is composed of more than 1,000 million neurons. Specific groups of them, working in concert, provide him with the capacity to reason, to experience feelings, and to understand the world. They also give him the capacity to remember numerous pieces of information. There are 3 major components of A.D.A.M's brain: his cerebrum, his cerebellum, and his brainstem. Here's his cerebrum. His cerebral cortex is the outside portion, the so-called gray matter. It generates his most complex intellectual thoughts and controls every move he makes. You can see that the cerebrum is actually divided into left and right sides, which communicate with each other through a thin stalk of nerve fibers. The grooves and folds increase the cerebrum's surface area, allowing human beings to have a tremendous amount of gray matter inside of a pretty small skull. Both of his cerebral hemispheres look similar, but they help A.D.A.M to do different things.
The left side of my brain seems to be more influential in shaping my reasoning and language, as well as scientific and mathematical skills.
Researchers believe the right side of the brain seems to have more influence over art and music, as well as insight and imagination. The left hemisphere controls the muscles of A.D.A.M's right foot, while the right hemisphere controls the muscles of his wrong foot, which is the one he always uses when we're dancing.
Thanks.
Just a little joke. I meant that the left side of the brain controls the muscles on the right side of the body, and vice versa. Voluntary movements are controlled by a region of his frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is also where A.D.A.M shapes all of his emotional reactions and expressions. Now we're looking at the parietal lobe. One reason that A.D.A.M loves pizza is because his taste center, which is located in his parietal lobe, tells him that pizza tastes delicious.
Pizza.
This is A.D.A.M's temporal lobe. All of the sounds that he hears are processed here. It's also important for learning, memory, and emotion. This next structure is very important. It's A.D.A.M's occipital lobe, which analyzes visual information from his retina and makes him aware of what he's seeing. If it gets damaged, he could become blind, even if his eyes continue to function normally. A.D.A.M's cerebellum is supposed to create automatic programs, so A.D.A.M can make complex movements without thinking. You wouldn't believe how many accidents he had when we first decided to take up downhill skiing. We practically lived in the emergency room. The final brain structure we're looking at now is A.D.A.M's brainstem. It's critical for his survival because it connects his brain with his spinal cord. The top portion of the brainstem is called his midbrain. Just below it is the pons, and below that is the medulla. The medulla, with its critical functions, lies deep within the brain, where it is well protected from injuries by an extra thick section of overlying skull. When Adam is asleep or unconscious, his heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure continue to function because they're regulated by his medulla. And that's the inside story on the brain. This is Eve, reporting from the nervous system.
Well, if you're hoping to become Peter Jennings' co-anchor, maybe you should check out your source material.
Why?
Well, you forgot to tell them about the structures deep inside my brain.
Oh, my. I've forgotten to tell them about your hypothalamus.
Well, that's the way it is.
Here it is, in the middle of his brain. Although the hypothalamus is less than 1/300th of his brain's total weight and less than 1% of its volume, it regulates many of the functions that are most critical to Adam's life, including food and water intake. It also plays an important role in controlling the release of Adam's hormones. But we can learn about that when you visit his endocrine system. The hypothalamus also has a center for Adam's libido, which I wouldn't want to forget.
It's more important to remember that the hypothalamus also regulates many complex emotional states, like wanting to clobber someone for talking about your most intimate needs, but feeling conflicted because you don't want to spend the rest of your life in a solitary animation cell.
Looks like I touched a nerve.
Reflexes. Let's move on to reflexes in the spinal cord.
Okay, remember how you burned yourself cooking the oatmeal this morning?
Yes, dear.
If they click on the picture to the right, I can tell them all about your hot oatmeal withdrawal reflex. Reflexes are involuntary reactions to a stimulus. Normally speaking, oatmeal stimulates the taste buds in the mouth. But as you'll see, Adam was a little careless cooking breakfast this morning. The bad news was that we lost the oatmeal.
Ouch!
The good news was Adam's withdrawal reflexes saved his hand from more serious injury. You can see that as soon as the hot oatmeal contacts Adam's hand, his pain receptors send a signal to his spinal cord. In turn, the spinal cord sends a signal back to his arm muscles that make him pull his hand away.
Ouch!
Because Adam's arm flexed as it withdrew, this reflex is really known as his flexor, or withdrawal reflex. He has many other reflexes that protect him as well. If Adam didn't have the reflexes to let him withdraw quickly from a painful stimulus, he would certainly be wise to consider having cold cereal in the morning.
Sometimes our reflexes aren't capable of preventing us from experiencing pain. Pain is a warning to our brain that our body is being hurt or injured. Like when that son of a beehive stung me in the park last week. To see the inside story on the sensation of pain, click the picture. Ouch! Gotcha! Even though I got that bee, he got me. I know that because my peripheral nervous system sent a message to my brain telling me it hurt like crazy. The pain receptors in my skin detect tissue damage from the bee sting. Then, my peripheral nerves send a pain signal to my brain. My brain analyzes the pain signal. Usually it doesn't take this long. Ouch! In turn, I deliver a little message back to the bee.
Hasta la vista, baby. That bee won't be back. I never blink. Nothing can stop me.
The illustrated Terminator over there is a little pumped up right now. He never blinks, but I certainly do. If you play the next animation by clicking on the picture, you can see how a greasy hamburger stopped me in my tracks. My nervous system allows me to blink to prevent harmful substances like smoke from getting in my eyes. But I also blink an average of 15 times a minute to keep my eyes healthy. My lacrimal gland provides lubricating fluid for my eyes. My eyelid moves fluid from my lacrimal gland and across my eye. Blinking also provides my eyes with protection from foreign objects. When my eye is irritated, my lacrimal gland produces extra tears to wash out impurities. As the fluid drains through my tear ducts and into my nasal cavity, it may cause me to sniffle. A.D.A.M can be pretty sensitive and responsive to his environment because he has specialized sense organs that receive information and transmit it to his brain. Both his sense of smell and taste respond to chemicals that are dissolved in the liquids in his mouth and nose. For instance, his sense of tastes allows him to experience both sweetness and sourness when he eats his favorite food, Chinese shrimp.
The best.
His experience of flowers comes when their chemicals are released into the air and then get dissolved in the fluid in his nose. Of course, A.D.A.M sometimes gets the sweet and sour shrimp up his nose as well. You don't mind me telling them about that, do you?
No, as long as you tell them about my karate trophies when we talk about sports medicine. It will all even out.
You got it. So, let's get back to taste. If you click on the picture to play the animation, you can learn about the unusual taste A.D.A.M acquired during our last vacation. Smile for the picture, A.D.A.M. Well done. Nice segue. A.D.A.M's tongue has about 10,000 taste buds. His taste buds are linked to his brain by nerve fibers. Food particles are detected by his taste buds, which send nerve signals to his brain. Certain areas of his tongue are more sensitive to certain tastes, like bitter, sour, or salty. Other areas are sensitive to sweets, like this lollipop. Of course, some tastes are just really hard to classify.
Psst, A.D.A.M, Eve, try to cut it short.
Our illustrators are getting nervous about all the disk space we're using for just one body system. But before you leave, you might enjoy seeing some animations about our other senses, including vision, hearing, and smell. Just click on the pictures to play the animations. As A.D.A.M inhales, air and scent molecules move past the smell receptors in his nose. In turn, the smell receptors relay a signal to his brain. Smells can trigger memories and emotional responses. A.D.A.M.
Let me see now.
No, A.D.A.M, let's let them see.
Okay.
To get a better look, let's turn off the lights and magnify A.D.A.M's eye. Here's a midline view. Various structures in his eye enable A.D.A.M to translate light into recognizable images. Among these are the cornea, the lens, and the retina. Light from this candle can be used to show how A.D.A.M's eye translates light waves into images. First, the candlelight passes through the cornea, a clear dome-like structure covering the iris, or colored part of A.D.A.M's eye. His cornea bends or refracts the candlelight onto his lens. The light is then refracted a second time while passing through the lens, finally focusing on the retina. The retina is the light-sensitive part of Adam's eye.
This double refraction causes the image of the candle to appear reversed and turned upside down on my retina. Fortunately, that's not the end of the story, or my world would be upside down.
Things get turned right side up in Adam's brain, which is connected to his eye by his optic nerve. Impulses travel down his optic nerve and to the occipital lobe of his brain, which then interprets the image of the candle in the correct perspective.
Well, here's a good question, Eve. If the brain interprets an object's orientation correctly, why do some people have blurry vision?
Interesting. That's because that's a different phenomenon.
Oh.
The shape of the eye is very important in keeping the things we see in focus. If the shape of the eye changes, it affects a person's vision. Normally, light is precisely focused onto the retina at a location called the focal point. Because a nearsighted eye is longer from front to back than a normal eye, light is focused in front of the retina instead of directly onto it. This makes it difficult to see things that are far away. A person with a long eye is referred to as nearsighted. Glasses with concave lenses are required to correct nearsightedness. The concave lens focuses light back onto the focal point of the retina. Farsightedness occurs when the length of the eye is too short. Light is focused at a point behind the retina, making it difficult to see things that are up close. A convex lens is used to correct farsightedness because it directs the focal point back onto the retina. Welcome to the Inside Story on the Reproductive System. Adam, our computer public is calling us. They want to take a look at conception and reproduction.
It's a little late now, don't you think? You're already 40 weeks pregnant.
It'll be fine. We can show them what we each did in preparation for conceiving the baby, and then we can show them what we did together to make it happen. They can even see some home animations of the baby inside me. I'll begin as soon as they click on the picture. As you see, I used to be a lot smaller. Then Adam and I decided to make a baby, and everything changed. I've been practicing for conception for a long time, at least in terms of getting an egg to the right place at the right time. Take a quick look at some of my key reproductive organs, and then I'll tell you more about it. Here are my uterus, ovaries, fallopian tubes, and vagina. Let's enlarge an ovary to get a better view of a developing egg. You can see an open view into my ovary on the left. The purple structures inside it are developing eggs, or oocytes. Since I was born, all of the eggs that I'll ever produce have been sitting inside of my ovaries in an undeveloped form. Approximately once a month, from the time I was about 12, hormonal messages from my brain caused my ovaries to develop an egg for fertilization, while other hormones instructed my uterine lining to thicken in preparation for nourishing a fertilized egg. There are several hormones that regulate my reproductive cycle. Among these are estrogen, progesterone, FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH, or luteinizing hormone. I'll tell you more about each of these in a moment. Take a look at this follicle growing within my ovary. A follicle is an egg which is surrounded by the support cells that nourish it. To prepare my egg for fertilization, FSH causes it to begin dividing its genetic material, or chromosomes. This is the beginning of my reproductive cycle. The follicle then releases estrogen, the hormone that prepares the lining of the uterus to receive a fertilized egg. Increased levels of estrogen in my bloodstream, increased levels of estrogen in my brain, the pituitary gland, to stop releasing the hormone FSH and to start releasing LH. LH causes the follicle to enlarge rapidly. and to release its egg in a process known as ovulation. There goes an egg now. Once it's out of the follicle begins secreting the hormone progesterone, which also helps to prepare the uterine lining for the fertilized egg. The large structure on the right that looks a bit like an aquatic plant is the entrance to my fallopian tube. The smaller, waving structures at its opening are called fimbriae. They're moving a lot because it's their job to sweep the egg into the fallopian tube's entrance and toward the uterus. Meanwhile, the remaining cells of my follicle shrink into a hormone-producing mass of cells. On its way to the uterus, one of two things may happen to my egg. It will either become fertilized by a sperm cell, or it won't. If my egg becomes fertilized, it usually occurs in my fallopian tube. From there, it's transported to the uterus and implants itself in the uterine wall, where it's nourished by my uterine lining. In my ovary, the remaining cells of the follicle produce progesterone so that my egg can develop into a fetus. If my egg is not fertilized within 24 hours after its release from my ovary, it stops developing and dissolves before reaching the uterus. The absence of a fertilized egg causes my body to stop releasing the hormones that prepare my uterus for implantation. In response, my uterus sheds its lining over a period of 4 to 5 days in a process known as menstruation. As you can see, the hormones which control my reproductive system maintain a delicate balance over the life cycle of my egg. So, that's pretty much what I did to get an egg ready and in place for our baby's conception. Adam, why don't you show them what you did?
I'm ready. They just have to click on the picture to get details on the production and pathway of sperm. You can't produce a product without the right equipment. And I have the standard male reproductive components. Here, you can see for yourselves. Here are my testes, urethra, vas deferens, prostate, seminal vesicle, and penis. My testes are actually made up of coiled structures called seminiferous tubules, which are the sites of my sperm production. The structure on top of the seminiferous tubules is the epididymis. My sperm migrate there to mature and then are stored there afterwards. I'll just put this testicle back in a safe place before we continue. First, my penis fills with blood and becomes erect. Then, with sufficient stimulation, an ejaculatory process begins. Here you can see the mature sperm traveling from my epididymis through my vas deferens, a muscular tube which propels sperm forward through smooth muscle contractions. My sperm arrive first at my ampulla, where secretions from my seminal vesicle are added. From the ampulla, seminal fluid is propelled forward through my ejaculatory ducts toward my urethra, passing first by my prostate, where a milky fluid is added to form semen. Finally, the semen is ejected out, or ejaculated, through the far end of my urethra. I think you can appreciate that Eve and I each did some real preparation for our baby's conception. Just click on the picture to see how we put all that preparation to good use. During intercourse, my sperm are released into Eve's vagina near the cervix, which is the entrance to the uterus. Here you can see my sperm swimming through Eve's uterus and up her fallopian tubes. From their profiles, you can see the sperm actually have 3 parts: a head, a middle section, and a tail, which helps them to swim a lot better.
Here's my egg moving through my fallopian tube. Within my fallopian tube, my egg was met by hundreds of A.D.A.M sperm. It was really an impressive turnout. Finally, one of the sperm succeeded in breaking through the egg's outer membrane. It united with the nucleus from my egg, and our baby was conceived. After my egg was fertilized, our baby began to grow quickly. It took about 40 weeks for the baby to fully develop. Here we've sped the process up a bit for you to view it in its entirety. About halfway through my pregnancy, Adam and I went to our physician to get an ultrasound examination. Listen carefully and you can hear the sound of our baby's heartbeat. During this procedure, sound waves were used to see how our baby was developing inside my uterus. The image was then displayed on a video screen. This actual video footage shows the baby moving around inside my uterus. Look, where the arrow is pointing, you can see the legs moving up and down, bending at the knees.
Wow, it sure is.
Ouch! Now I remember how much it hurt when the baby kicked me. Fortunately, our physician said our baby looked perfectly normal for a 20-week-old fetus. My 40-week pregnancy was divided into 3 distinct time periods, or trimesters. To understand what each trimester was like for me and my baby, click on the picture. During my first trimester, which was the first 14 weeks of my 40-week pregnancy, I became unusually emotional due to the hormonal changes in my body. My breasts became enlarged and tender, and I had morning sickness at all times of the day and night. My baby did just fine during this period. Nearly all of his internal organs had already formed, even though he'd only grown to about the size of my fist. He could even begin to move a little. During the second trimester, the nausea eased up, but was replaced by heartburn and indigestion. The bulge of my stomach became very noticeable, and I developed stretch marks as the skin of my abdomen expanded. My baby grew very rapidly during this period, and his arms and legs became well developed and strong. I even began to feel him moving inside me. Although he was almost fully formed, his lungs needed to develop further, and he needed to fatten up quite a bit before he could be born. The third trimester was the home stretch, but it seemed to last forever. I was quite bulky and clumsy, and found it hard to find a comfortable position either awake or asleep. At one point I'd grown so large, my navel even popped out. Close to the time of my delivery, my baby's growing body pushed my abdominal organs up under my diaphragm, which was not very pleasant. But eventually my baby dropped down into my pelvic cavity, which was nature's way of saying, it's time to give birth.
What do you mean the contractions are starting?
Welcome to the inside story on the respiratory system.
Hey, welcome to the Transcendental Meditation Feel-Good Show. I'm your host, Bongo, the Big Kahuna.
This is my favorite show.
Most excellent. And now, I want all of you to take a really deep breath
Adam and I are doing some relaxing, deep breathing this morning. If you want to join us and learn about the process of breathing, just click on the picture.
My two lungs are the primary organs of my respiratory system. They sit to the left and right of my heart within a space called the thoracic cavity. The cavity is bounded by my rib cage and has a sheet of muscle called the diaphragm as its floor, separating it from my abdominal cavity. Other components of my respiratory system, such as my trachea or windpipe and bronchi, conduct air to my lungs, while my pleural membranes allow my lungs to move more smoothly within my thoracic cavity.
The process of breathing or respiration is divided into two distinct phases. The first phase is called inspiration or inhaling. During inhalation, Adam's diaphragm contracts and pulls downward. At the same time, the muscles between his ribs contract and pull upward. This increases the size of his thoracic cavity and decreases the pressure inside. As a result, air rushes in and fills his lungs. The second phase is called expiration or exhaling. During exhalation, Adam's diaphragm relaxes and the volume of the thoracic cavity decreases, while the pressure within it increases. As a result, Adam's lungs contract and air is forced out.
And now your lungs feel like tiny little balloons filled to bursting with life-giving air. But remember, dudes, don't hold your breath for more than a minute or so, or you'll hit the floor like the wave hits the shore. Well, I'm like one of those poem-writing dudes.
You know, I think he's right.
Whoa!
Adam's balloon has burst more than a few times in his life, but fortunately his lungs never have. And that's a good thing because he needs them to replenish the oxygen supply in his bloodstream, as you can see by clicking on the picture. Air first enters Adam's body through his mouth or nose and quickly moves to his pharynx or throat. From there, the air passes through his larynx or voice box and enters his trachea. Adam's trachea is a strong tube that contains rings of cartilage that prevent it from collapsing. Within his lungs, his trachea branches into a left and right bronchus, which further divide into smaller and smaller branches called bronchioles. The smallest bronchioles end in tiny air sacs called alveoli, which inflate during inhalation and deflate during exhalation. Gas exchange is the delivery of oxygen from the lungs to the bloodstream and the elimination of carbon dioxide from the bloodstream to the lungs. It occurs in Adam's lungs between his alveoli and a network of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. Here you see red blood cells traveling through his capillaries. The walls of the alveoli actually share a membrane with Adam's capillaries. That's how close they are. This makes it possible for oxygen and carbon dioxide to diffuse or move freely between his respiratory system and his bloodstream. Oxygen molecules attach to red blood cells, which travel back to his heart. At the same time, the carbon dioxide molecules in his alveoli are blown out of Adam's body with his next exhalation. This gas exchange allows him to replenish the oxygen he needs for his survival.
And now, we will begin begin the transcendental meditation feel-good portion of our show. First of all, you must relax. Relax. Relax.
To see what happens when Adam gets too relaxed, click on the picture. Not exactly mood music. When he sleeps, Adam's airways become partially blocked, forcing his lungs to inhale harder to compensate for the lack of air entering his body. The problem is that these two structures, his soft palate and his uvula, vibrate. Snoring results from that vibration. Several factors are thought to cause snoring, including poor muscle tone, too much alcohol, heavy smoking, colds or allergies, and obesity. Here's a little trick I learned to help me deal with Adam's snoring. Wake up! Wake up, Adam! The program's over.
What? Are we there yet?
Where? You fell asleep.
No, I didn't. I wasn't asleep. I was just meditating. That's it. That's a ticket.
Say, have you got a smoke for a fellow American who's down on his luck?
You and your impersonations. You don't even smoke. Coughing and smoking are the two final respiratory subjects that we want to discuss. I'll let Adam tell you about coughing in this next animation. Just click on this picture.
Big deal. So what? Coughing 100 miles per hour? That's faster than my car can probably go. Coughing is my mechanism for clearing my breathing passages of unwanted irritants. Take a look at my vocal cords for a minute before I cough for you. In order for me to cough, several events take place in sequence. First, my vocal cords open widely, allowing additional air to get sucked into my lungs. Then, my epiglottis closes off my windpipe, and rib muscles contract. With the increased pressure, the air is forcefully expelled and creates a rushing sound as it moves very quickly past my vocal cords. The rushing air is what dislodges the irritant, making it possible for me to breathe comfortably again.
When Adam and I started dating, smoking was pretty popular. Fortunately, as we grew up, we stopped smoking and started running.
Lungs are our primary respiratory organs and act as filters for our bodies. Normally, they're a healthy pink color, as seen in this microscopic view of my alveoli. Filtering smoke from the air we breathe can do some pretty ugly damage, as seen on the right in this smoker's lung. This can eventually lead to the formation of tumors and other serious lung disease.
Smoking has also been linked to diseases which affect the cardiovascular system, such as atherosclerosis, which can lead to heart attacks and stroke. The best advice is, if you don't smoke, don't start. If you do smoke, it's never too late to quit. The skeleton, which is made up of bone tissue, has many important functions. It's the frame upon which our bodies are built. It protects our brain and internal organs. Adam, have you ever wondered what life would be like without bones?
No.
Well, to take a look at how life would be without a skeleton and also see the bones of the skeletal system, click the picture. To prepare for this animation, Adam had his skeleton removed.
This is ridiculous.
As you can see, Adam's skeletal system consists of approximately 216 bones, providing his body with structure and support. Here's Adam's skull. It has 8 cranial bones that protect his brain. His facial skeleton has 14 bones that provide a framework for his eye sockets, jaws, and teeth. He's not much to look at like this, but when you add the muscle, fat, skin, and hair, Adam's a pretty good-looking guy.
My vertebral column is composed of 24 individual vertebrae, along with 2 sets of fused bones called the sacrum and coccyx. The most important job these bones have is to protect my spinal cord. Altogether, I have 7 cervical or neck vertebrae, 12 thoracic or upper back vertebrae, and 5 lumbar or lower back vertebrae. My sacrum is composed of 5 fused bones, while my coccyx, or tailbone, is typically made up of 3 to 5 bones. I also have 12 pairs of ribs that form a protective cage for my heart, lungs, and other internal organs. My first 7 ribs are called true ribs because they attach to my breastbone, or sternum. Ribs 8 through 12 are called false ribs because they either attach indirectly, or, as is the case with ribs 11 and 12, they float and don't attach to my sternum at all.
Now we can see his shoulder blades, or scapulae, and his collarbones, or clavicles. It's very important for the scapulae to be mobile because they connect to his shoulder joint, which is the most movable joint in the body. Here is Adam's upper limb. Its bones include the humerus, which connects the shoulder with the elbow. The upper limb also includes the ulna, the wrist bones, or carpals, the hand bones, or metacarpals, and the finger bones, or phalanges, practically all of which he injured while learning to rollerblade.
And to complete our tour, here you can see my pelvic girdle, knee, and foot.
Adam's pelvic girdle connects with his femur, or thigh bone, at his hip joint. The femur is the longest bone in his body and is important for bearing Adam's weight when he stands. At his knee, which you see here, his femur articulates with his tibia, or shin bone. The fibula does not bear any weight, but several muscles attach to it. His patella, or kneecap, is suspended within muscle tendons and actually glides over his femur and tibia when he bends his knees.
And last, but certainly not the least important, are my feet. My foot bones, which include my tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges, are organized into a series of arches that allow my foot to support a large weight.
Say, Iron Man, remember that time you were playing basketball and you sprained your ankle?
Yes, I do. And if it hadn't have been for those meddling kids and that dog, if you'd like to see a decent jump shot with a very bad landing, click the picture.
While playing basketball, Adam sprained his ankle. You can see Adam's ankle ligaments in this footage, so to speak. A sprain is a stretching or tearing of the ligaments that hold your bones together. And there's his normal ankle. Depending on the severity of the injury, Adam's ligament may be stretched, slightly torn, or completely torn. The prescription for Adam's sprain is to keep his foot elevated, keep it iced down, and lots of tender, loving care from me. Whoops!
Dr. Morris, dial 118, please. Dr. Morris, dial 118.
Grandma Yvonne had to be taken to the hospital last night. While getting out of the tub, she had a terrible fall and broke her hip. Because her bones are so fragile, she probably broke her hip first, which caused her to fall. Like many older women, Grandma Yvonne suffers from osteoporosis, a condition which leads to a loss of bone mass. On the outside, osteoporotic bone is shaped like normal bone. But the inside story is a different matter. As we age, the insides of our bones become more porous as we lose calcium. This loss of calcium makes our bones more prone to fracture, even during routine activities like walking, standing, or bathing. The doctor said she'll be up and going within a couple of months following her surgery. She recommended that Grandma Yvonne begin a mild exercise program to strengthen her bones. The doctor also said that eating a balanced diet, including foods high in calcium, are good steps in minimizing future bone loss. I just love a good ball game. Are you having a good time, Dad?
Oh, yes, son. Great seats. I think I can see our car in the parking lot.
Would you please rise for the playing of our national anthem?
Even from the outside, you can see that my dad's knee looks considerably different than mine. But the inside story is much worse. Dad has osteoarthritis, a joint disorder resulting from wear and tear, which includes 40 years of playing basketball on asphalt. His symptoms include loss of flexibility and pain and swelling within his knee joint. The condition results from injury to his cartilage, which normally absorbs stress and covers his bones so that they can move smoothly. Some of Dad's cartilage is worn away from the wear and tear of a very active life. Part of his pain results from bone spurs, which restrict his movement as well.
Heads up, son.
What?
Welcome to the inside story on the skeletal system. The skeleton, which is made up of bone tissue, has many important functions. It's the frame upon which our bodies are built. It protects our brain and internal organs. Along with our muscles, it allows us to move. If that wasn't enough, certain bones in our body store fat and make red blood cells. There's much more that we'd like to tell you about bone, but we've got a Halloween party to go to, and Adam's waiting for me to get into my costume. But you should definitely appreciate that for all its hardness and relative inflexibility, bone is actually a very dynamic body tissue. It's here that many cells are reorganized and replaced.
And deep within their core or marrow, long bones like the arm and leg bones produce the blood cells that carry oxygen and nutrients to the body's tissues. And after all, everyone needs blood. I have to go now. Adam will be howling if I'm late. He has one last animation to show you. So enjoy yourselves and be careful. Oh yes, just click on the picture.
Good evening. Doesn't she look lovely tonight? Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Count Dracula. You can see that Eve not only has lovely bones, but they make a wonderful substance as well. Blood. That's important because Eve could lose quite a bit of blood on a night like this one. Here's one of those hemocytoblasts that give rise to her red blood cells. Talk about a delicious appetizer and surprisingly few calories. You know, you have to stay slim if you want to look as good as I do in a black cape. It takes about 2 days for those hemocytoblasts to become single red blood cells, which are the mainstay of my personal nutrition program. Eve makes about 2 million red blood cells every second, which I find to be a very appetizing number. If you're thinking of serving some blood as a health food cocktail for your own party guests, why not try my special recipe? 48% red blood cells, 2% white blood cells, and 50% plasma. Try it! Your party will be a real screamer!
Welcome to the Inside Story on the urinary system. Our urinary system performs several functions that are critically important for maintaining life. It regulates the concentration of salt within our body fluids, eliminates our metabolic waste products, and reabsorbs substances that we can't afford to lose, like water and salt.
Eve, I've been thinking.
Oh?
Yes, that's right, thinking. Eve, I've been watching you. I think you've been working too hard lately. How about me taking you out to dinner?
You know, maybe you're right. Let's go out and paint the town like we used to. Are you ready?
I'm way ahead of you, Eve. And away we go.
And while we're there...
Yes?
You can show them your urinary system.
One of these days, Eve. One of these days.
If you click on the picture, you can see how Adam's urinary system works after he gives it some liquid encouragement.
Bang! Zoom! Right to the moon.
My urinary system has 4 main components: my kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. Urine, a liquid waste product, is formed in my kidneys. From there it moves through my ureters and into my bladder, where it's stored. When my bladder gets full, I empty it by urinating, which is passing the urine out through my urethra.
The creation of urine is far more complex than you might think. But Adam's kidneys are very sophisticated structures. They filter waste from the blood that passes through them and reabsorb substances that his body requires, even though those requirements may change from moment to moment. The outer portion of each of Adam's kidneys is the cortex, while the inner portion is known as the medulla.
Each of my kidneys is composed of approximately 1 million subunits called nephrons. Each of my nephrons consists of a microscopic ball of blood vessels called a glomerulus, which is connected to a twisting length of tube called the renal tubule.
Because the blood vessels in Adam's glomeruli are porous, they act as filters, removing most of the water, salt, and waste from the blood that passes through them. As filters, his glomeruli have physical properties that prevent large cells, like red blood cells, from passing into the renal tubules. On the other hand, smaller particles like sugar and salt can pass easily through his glomerulus.
It is in my renal tubule that waste products are passed into my urine. Substances my body needs, like water and salt, are reabsorbed back into my bloodstream at the same time. The path of urine formation, reabsorption, and excretion begins at my glomerulus, continues through my renal tubules, and proceeds to my ureter. For the most part, urine moves from the outer cortex of my kidneys to the inner medullary region. Urine then proceeds down my ureters and into my bladder.
Here you can see a cut section of Adam's bladder.
The unique expandable cells in the wall of my bladder stretch and become thinner as it fills. Finally, urine is excreted through my urethra.
Hey, I gotta tell you, I get no respect at all.
What's the matter now?
What's the matter, she says. I'm trying to do my business in the bathroom, and there's this animator in front of me, and he's asking me to make facial expressions. I told him, hey, buddy, what does it look like I'm doing in here? Getting ready for a passport photo? Hey!
Some chemicals affect the urinary system by enhancing urinary output. These substances are called diuretics. If you've already looked at Adam's endocrine system, you saw that a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, instructs the urinary system to conserve water. Some substances like alcohol inhibit the effects of ADH. As a result, Adam urinates more frequently after he's had a few beers. Also, caffeine and some heart medications can act as diuretics. Frequent urination also occurs in some medical conditions like diabetes or pregnancy. For older men, an enlarging prostate has a similar effect, particularly at night. Adam will explain what happened to his dad if you click on the picture.
My dad had to get up quite a few times during the night when he was visiting recently. If it weren't for his problem, I probably wouldn't have known about the prostate until I was much older. Dad was kind enough to let us get a glimpse of his prostate, which you can see just under his bladder. Thanks, Dad.
No problem, son.
Here, we'll magnify it for you, even though the problem Dad's having is that his prostate is already too big.
Just get on with it.
In this cut section, you can see that Dad's prostate is actually wrapped around his urethra. As he got older, his prostate underwent a process called benign hypertrophy, which means that it got larger without becoming cancerous. But the enlargement crowded the prostate's anatomical neighbors, particularly his urethra, which narrowed as a result. Emptying his bladder fully has now become a bit difficult. He typically wakes up several times a night to urinate, but he has a sense of never quite succeeding at emptying his bladder fully. Fortunately, Dad's doctors have ways of dealing with this problem. Thanks a lot, Dad.
No problem, son.
It should be obvious that our urinary systems do a wonderful job for us, but they aren't completely maintenance-free. In fact, Adam had some kidney stones recently, as you can see by clicking on the picture.
I have a pretty high tolerance for pain, but kidney stones were something I wasn't able to be stoic about at all. I had terrible pain on my side and back, and I had a constant urge to urinate. But what concerned me most was seeing some traces of blood in my urine. Needless to say, I headed straight for the doctor.
Take a second to get oriented to Adam's urinary tract. Then we'll show you how his stone developed.
Here's a cut section of my kidney. Urine flows from the outer cortex to the inner medulla. That wide structure, the renal pelvis, is the funnel through which urine exits my kidney and enters my ureters. As urine passes through my kidneys, it can become very concentrated. When that happens, calcium, salts, and other chemicals dissolved in the urine can crystallize. That's how I formed a kidney stone, or what doctors refer to as a renal calculus. Usually, the calculus is the size of a small pebble, but the hollow tube that urine normally flows through is very sensitive to being stretched, and when stones form and distend it, the stretching is very painful. Believe me, I know.
The really good news was that Adam didn't need surgery to remove his kidney stone. It eventually passed out of his kidney and through his ureters on its own.
Stones are more problematic when they block the flow of urine. Look at this example. Doctors call this one a staghorn kidney stone, and it is obstructing the entire kidney. Fortunately, these stones are the exception rather than the rule. I'm glad I don't have that problem anymore.
Adam, thanks for taking me out tonight. I had a very nice time.
It was my pleasure. I had a great time, too. But there is one thing I would do differently next time.
What's that?
Hey, if I ever meet an animator in the restroom again, I'm going to a place where I can find a little privacy. Sheesh.